Welcome to another trip down the Bourbon Road with your hosts, Jim and Mike. So grab a glass of your favorite bourbon and kick back.
Well, you know who likes to give back to their community is one of our sponsors, Jim. Chris Cruz from Cruz Customs Flags. He does custom flags out of bourbon barrels. Not only does he do that, but he's also using veterans to build those flags with. I've got one right behind me, Jim. I know you got one on your bar. Beautifully handcrafted, repurposing a bourbon barrel, not throwing it away, not making it into smoking chips, making a piece of Americana, right?
It's something that'll last probably quite a few years longer than a bourbon barrel would, right?
Not only that, but he's using veterans to build those pieces of art with. You know, you gotta love that. But he's also giving back to his community at all times, helping veterans out like ourselves. He is really in tune to that. Go check his site out, cruzcustomsflags.com. You can buy his flags on there, key holders. Heck, Jim's got some these neat little cups that are charred inside, made out of oak, that you can put a cocktail in.
They call those the whiskey grail, don't they?
Yeah, that is, it kind of reminds you, when you think of a grail, but truly a whiskey grail right there. Go check those out at Cruz Customs Flags. Purchase from this guy, veteran owned, veteran operated, making a veteran built product.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jim Shannon.
And I'm Mike Hyatt.
And this is the Bourbon Road. And today, Mike, it's another Craft Distillery Monday. Starting off great here. I noticed you just took a sip of something there, warming yourself up for the bottle we're going to taste, I guess.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. So today we've got a whiskey on the show that has a few years under its belt. We've had it before. Well, an earlier version of it.
We had earlier versions, so I thought we'd stick with just every time one of these come out, Jim, might as well do a review of it, right? And let everybody know whether they should buy it or not. And what we're going to review today is the Calumet Farm 16-year-old. This is a $150 bottle. So it's she got some price on her.
Yeah, so we're starting to dance on the edge a little bit here with these Calumet releases. Now, these are all supposedly sourced from Barton, and we've watched them grow up a year at a time. And we've had it on the show. We had the 14 on. I think we had the 15 on. Not sure if we had an earlier one on, but so this is the 16. And I'm a little worried. It might be getting a little old, but
yeah, this let all the listeners know what's in this bottle right here. So the batch size of this is 19 barrels, Jim. We know the mash bill is 74% corn, 18% rye, and 8% malted barley. 106 proof, and like I said, $150 MSRP. Now, we've been talking about that $10 per year, so might have saved a little money on this one, Jim. $10 savings.
Of course, with every year, it gets a little more expensive too, doesn't it?
Yeah. And, the people that make this are pretty secretive, like we've said before, about this whiskey. Where it's being bottled, where it's being sourced from. But we think we know, right?
I think there's a general consensus. This is from Western Spirits Beverage Company, and they're in Bowling Green. And really nothing more than kind of a warehouse down there.
Yeah, that's pretty right. Now, something different about this bottle, we noticed that the 14 didn't have a horse on it, but the 15 did, which is Whirl Away. And they chose to put Citation on this bottle. Citation was a pretty famous racehorse. Won the Triple Crown. Won 16 races in a row, Jim, and was the first racehorse to win $1 million.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Yeah, they had quite a streak in the 1940s with Whirl Away and then Citation. I think Whirl Away also won the Triple Crown. Whirl Away, in addition to winning the Triple Crown, also went on to win the Travers Stakes. I think when you add the Triple Crown to the Travers Stakes, you're at what they call the Grand Slam of thoroughbred racing. So pretty cool.
Yeah, you would say this horse, Citation had almost like everything there is. Like you said, he was the U.S. Horse of the Year from 1948. He won the Triple Crown. He was the U.S. champion 2-year-old, U.S. champion 3-year-old. Just some amazing stuff, and was actually voted into the United States Racing Horse Hall of Fame in 1959. That's saying something. A lot of people think, bourbon and horses go together, and they're telling the history of horse racing through this bottle right here.
Yeah, it's a great looking bottle, great label. We do see that typically on the top shelf when you go to your favorite liquor store. The price tag is a little bit high, but it's got a lot of years behind it. Mike, if I remember this one correctly from a prior year, it's a bit spicy. Got a little bit of heat to it. A little bit
just fire on the mountain.
A little fire on the mountain. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was, but I haven't tasted this one. We just cracked it open. We're going to give you an honest review, listeners. I made sure Jim had a big old sample of it. So he's not going to go home empty handed here. He'll get to try it out, and hopefully we'll tell you what we think.
Well, I'm ready, Mike. Let's nose it and let's taste it and let's tell them what we think.
Let's do it.
Got a little bit of a dusty nose to it.
Yeah, that oak and that dust of a rick house is coming through. I get actually a little bit of cinnamon butter on that, like a honey butter or something.
Yeah, it is a little buttery, but you can definitely tell there's going to be some punch there. But the nose isn't like coming across super aggressive, but you can just tell there's a bit of spice there, and there's some of the good rickhouse aging of the oak that's going to come through.
You ever taken those bag peanuts and poured them into a Dr. Pepper before?
I have never done that. No.
I don't know if that's a Southern thing, but when I was a kid growing up, you'd drink a drink out of your Dr. Pepper, and you take that $1.50 bag of peanuts, salted peanuts, and pour them in your Dr. Pepper, and you had a whole meal going right there all together. But I might be getting a little bit of that peanut in here, Jim, along with a Dr. Pepper spice.
Well, it is buttery. Definitely got a butter note to it. The oak is very much there. This is not new oak. This is very much old oak.
Yeah, this might be a pour that you let set in your glass a little bit and just open up, let it breathe. This is, I think it's going to be something that's going to tingle our palates a little bit, Jim.
All right. I'm ready to taste it, Mike. Let's do it.
Cheers.
Cheers. Man, I'm getting black licorice.
Yeah, you're pretty spot on. It's heavy on the oak. There's no doubt about that, right?
Yep, definitely heavy on the oak. A little bit tannic on the back, but definitely kind of a heavy black licorice, like hard candy black licorice.
There's not a lot of sweetness on this. If there was going to be anything, I would say this is more of a baker's chocolate. That sweetness, there's no sweetness there. It's got, like you said, a little bit of bitterness to it. Bitter chocolate's coming out. That licorice, like you said, but there's no sweetness to it. There's that taste of maybe a licorice that was sitting on that coffee table for way too long, and you pick it up, chew it on. You're like, oh, what happened to all the sugar? It ran out.
Yeah. It's almost like it's got a little bit of an Aperol note too. It's definitely minus sweetness. Like it's the absolute absence of sweetness.
Yeah, it is rather oily for 106 proof. And I don't know where that sweetness went in this one, but I would say it's got just a tad bit of spice, not a whole lot, not overpowering spice to it, right?
No, not like I expected it to have. Certainly some things have changed in the last year. It has taken a turn a little bit. I wish I had brought a bottle, Mike, and we could have tried one side by side. Maybe that's something we'll do off air after the show, and just because I'm curious to see that change in the last year.
I think we said that last time, Jim.
Yeah, did we really?
Yeah, I think we did. So I think what we need to do, to be fair to listeners, we got to. And I don't know. I think I actually gave my 14 away to somebody, but I still
have a 14,
and then I got a 15. I think. So between the 14, the 15, the 16, maybe we'll just do a whole show on that. Let everybody know, hey, this is what you can get. Because I saw all 3 bottles today at Evergreen Liquor in Louisville. It was nice to see all 3 expressions sitting up on the shelf together. They're in a lot of case. Not surprising to see that.
You call that the trifecta?
Yeah. I tried to get one of our listeners, Mark Ratliff, to buy all 3, and he just shook his head. He's like, no, sir. But yeah, no sweetness, that baker's chocolate, maybe a little cocoa powder, maybe. When you were a little kid, you never dipped into that thinking, well, I'm going to get myself some chocolate and dipped into that cocoa powder, did you?
No, I think I must have learned it along the way sometime without doing that, because I knew it is not going to be good.
Yeah, it's no good.
Cinnamon are 2 things you don't want to take on their own, right? You've
never did the cinnamon challenge where you've tried to eat a spoonful of it? No,
I could never do it.
Dang near choked to death on that stuff. It'll just dry your mouth out. Not that I've ever did it, but I've seen plenty of people try it, and I'm like, nah, that's not for me right there. Yeah, I would say it's a medium finish on this, though. It's just lacking a little bit of sweetness to be a bourbon.
Kind of, I think it's past that sweet spot now. And maybe last year, we'd have to go back and take a look at our review. We'll certainly do that before we try the 3 side by side, but it may have already been on its way. And for me, I think at 16 years, it's time for this to come out of the barrels. I don't know how many more barrels of this they've got aging away, but I mean, it's interesting. But, for me personally, going further in the barrel would not improve this whiskey further. But that's my own personal opinion based on what I like. And I'm often a little nervous about over-oaked or overaged bourbons.
Yeah, you know what this reminds me of, Jim? And we reviewed the Knob Creek 15-year-old. We said the same thing about that, is that it was overly oaky. And I'm kind of getting that in this right here, that maybe this, either they proofed it down too much and it took that sweetness out, or it was left in the barrel too long. And I know a lot of people just look at the age on this and say, wow. And I'm not saying this is a bad whiskey at all by any means. I just don't know where this place is at. Where you drink this at?
Well, remember now, the Knob Creek 18 made a big recovery, right? It came back from, we thought the 15 was getting a little bit too far gone, but then the 18 kind of pulled it out. And that's what you're able to do when you have a huge barrel inventory, right? You're able to find some of those barrels that didn't cook off in the high ricks, right? And maybe play with the blends a little bit.
Yeah, and maybe it's the season too. How did this in that season? How did it come back out of the barrel? It's maturation's going in and out of the barrel a lot. Do those sugars get left in there in a year where it's not as hot or something, or it's cool? It's just one of those weird things. I don't know. Drinking another sip of this, when I drink it, I get a little sweetness now. Maybe it's opened up a little bit more in the glass. There's not a whole lot left in there, but it's definitely still lacking a little bit of sweetness for me. Medium finish. Just a little bit of Kentucky hug, I guess, but there's no spice on your tongue. It's lacking that.
Well, I have to say, Mike, I always like trying these because it's interesting to follow a bourbon as it ages and you taste it each year. and you get to experience, what that bourbon is doing over time sitting in those barrels. I think we get some pretty dramatic changes per year now. So I'm not sure how long they're going to continue doing this. Maybe that's a good question for them. How much inventory do they have? How long do they keep playing on, at 18 to 20 barrels a batch? Could be that they have another 100 barrels for all we know. And this is going to 21, 22 years.
Good Lord. That'd be some old whiskey at this point right here for a rye. Usually your wheaters can, I think, handle that older age better than a rye could probably. But heck, what I know, we're just two bourbon bullshitters and just drinking this whiskey. Obviously, I bought it because I want to have an older whiskey on the shelf for people to experience and to let them educate themselves about older whiskeys. That age statement doesn't always matter, right? Jimmy Russell would probably tell you that, hey, a whiskey's good at 8 years to 12 years. But some people see that age statement and say, man, I'm going to try that. So if you're out there listening to that, right behind this bottle of whiskey is a 7-year-old old Ezra Brooks. And yeah.
It's starting to, as I continue to sip on this, I'm getting that Christmas fruit cake.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
And so it is interesting. It does tell a story, having these different ages of whiskey and watching them go through that aging pattern. I think it's interesting in that respect. Certainly, I would love to see just for reference what happens in 17. Like what happens at 17. I'm kind of curious now what it's going to taste like next year. So I think, as far as we're concerned, Mike, let's not finish off any of these bottles. Let's hold them back so that we can continue to do these comparisons for our listeners over time. I think it'd be an interesting thing to do.
Yeah, maybe we should sit down and do just a show on that right there. And, so roadies, you're not going to see this on a roadie bar. We're going to save this one back. I'd also like to take and drink this alongside that, maybe that Knob Creek 18-year-old or that 15-year-old and see what older age bourbons like this, how they compare to each other. I think, like I said in the beginning of the show, that maybe this is a whiskey that you got to let open up a little bit, Jim, these older whiskeys. Let it breathe, and then then you get a little bit of that sweetness that comes out. So, yeah, lessons learned here in this review right here. I love it.
So, Western Spirits out of Bowling Green, in addition to the Calumet Farm expression, they also have Sam Houston, which we've had on the show as well.
Yes, sir.
They have Bird Dog, which I don't think we've had on the show, and they have Lexington Bourbon, which, again, I'm not sure that we've had Lexington on the show either.
I don't think we've had either one of those on the show. I don't know if there's a reason why. We're always searching out those other whiskeys. And, the only reason I bought this is because I wanted to finish out our line and say, hey, we didn't miss a year. So listeners, that's our thoughts on this one. If you don't like overly oaky bourbons, I would say don't purchase this one. It's $150 is not cheap.
If you like your bourbons to be sweet, this is definitely not sweet.
No, sir. No.
It's like completely absence of any sweetness. It's dry from the beginning to the end. So,
yep.
But I say it's got that Christmas fruitcake, but it does that without having any sweetness, right? It's kind of funny.
This is a perplexed bourbon for me. I'm not sure how to take it. I think I just got to let it sit in a glass for a while. I'm going to open up and get some air to it, and maybe it's been in that barrel for so long, Jim, that it needs air. It just needs air.
That could be. All right. Well, let's make a little note in our notebook there to try and put together a show where we look at the 14, 15, and 16 side by side. I think it would be an interesting thing to do. If you're on the fence about Calumet 16 and you're wondering whether or not it's a bourbon you ought to open your wallet for, the best advice I can give you is think about what you like. If you like sweeter bourbons, if you like bourbons that are softer, this is not it. If you like bourbons that don't have an overly oaky back end to them, this is not your bourbon. If you don't like dry bourbons that sort of suck the moisture out of the back end of your palate, this is probably not going to be the one for you either. But if those things are all line up to be something you like, if you like this might be a good cigar bourbon. I don't know. Good possibility.
That's definitely a good idea. Well, another great review, Jim.
Yeah. What would you say the price was again, Mike?
$150.
It was 105 proof. What was it? 106?
106 proof.
106 proof. And what was the mash bill again?
So the mash bill on this, listeners, is 74% corn, 18% rye, and 8% malted barley.
Square on a Barton mash bill, right?
Maybe, just maybe, Jim, just maybe.
Well, it's out there. It's on the shelves, folks. If you want to take a chance on it, I'm not the guy to say no. I probably won't buy one for my bar. Mike, I know you like to have the latest and greatest, so you picked one up yourself. Are you happy with your purchase?
Yeah, time will tell. Time will tell. Like I said, I'm going to have to let this one, if I'm going to drink it, I'm going to let it sit in the glass for a little bit, open up, and then I'll sip on it just to get that tad bit of sweetness out of it. So, yeah, I mean, it's nice for guests that say, hey, I got to have that older bourbon, and you know me, I like to have a nice bottle for guests to come over and they'll look at it. And it's like that shiny nickel. You got to pick it up.
Absolutely. Well, Mike, where can people find us on the internet?
Well, you can find us on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, on our private Facebook group, the Bourbon Roadies. You got to be 21. You got to love bourbon. Hell, who don't like bourbon? And you got to agree to play nice, because we don't do rudeness in our group. That means we don't talk about politics. We don't talk about religion. We don't talk about social issues. What we talk about in there is whiskey. If you want to celebrate whiskey with us, you want to celebrate life, you want to celebrate a retirement, a birthday, if you even want to celebrate a family member's death that loved whiskey, you want to say, hey, can you raise a glass to this family member? That's the kind of stuff we do. Right, Jim?
That's right. Absolutely. And we do 2 shows every single week. Every Monday, we'll do a craft distillery episode, like today's, where we'll take a look at one single expression. We'll taste it. We'll talk about it. We'll give you our opinion. We'll let you know that whether or not we think you should add it to your bar. And every Wednesday, we'll do a full-length episode. We'll have a guest on, drink a couple of expressions, deep dive a subject, give you a full hour to get you to work and get you back. That's 2 episodes every single week. Mike, what do they have to do not to miss one?
Well, listeners, you need to scroll up the top of that app, hit that check sign, that plus sign, that subscribe sign. That app's going to let you know, hey, these 2 jokers have a show out today and you need to listen. Then you need to scroll on down, hit that 5-star review, leave us some comments, because you know what's going to happen if you don't. The big bad booty daddy of the bourbon's going to come to your house with this Calumet Farm 16-year-old Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey. Drink it all night long. Maybe even smoke a cigar. Be talking like Big Chief by the end of the night. But seriously, those reviews, those comments, they open up doors to distilleries. Get great whiskey in our hands like this Calumet Farm 16-year-old. We'd really appreciate it.
So Mike and I are very approachable. If you see us in town, at a liquor store, you see us at a distillery doing a tour, if you see us at an event, make sure you walk up to us and say, hey, shake our hand. We'd love to meet you. Love to hear your bourbon story. If you've got an idea for a show or a bottle we should have on a show, make sure you let us know. You can always hop on our website, thebourbonroad.com. We got a contact us page on there. Send us a quick message. We'll get back with you. You can also send us an email. I'm Jim at thebourbonroad.com. He's Mike at thebourbonroad.com. But like we always say, probably the best way, hit up our DMs on Instagram. I'm Jay Shannon63.
I'm Big Bourbon Chief.
And we'll see you down
the Bourbon Road.